Hello everyone, and what we're going to be doing now is we're going to show two methods of making hair. One that I like to call the Lego method, or where we're going to be using a lot of pre-made geometry, like what we're seeing over here. And another method we're going to be using is going to be playfully known as the banana peel method. Not that we're going to be making these banana peels per se, but we are going to make these a little bit more flat to begin with, and eventually add some three-dimensionality as we go. We usually would start with a lower poly like this first, and then go out further. Now, because these are relatively simple elements to make, I'll just go over really quickly how I made these just to get started. Each of these, again, is using very simple geometry. I basically just added a subdivision going in every direction to help me with this. You don't necessarily need to go with this direction, but just to save some time, I made this up first. The other object I have here is a cone. You could basically find one over here. And this one we don't really use that often. That's why I wanted to make sure I took the time to show that. And the third object is a torus. I like to playfully call this Homer Simpson's favorite 3D object, because again, it does look like a donut. The plane that's over here, I actually saw the specifications over here for those who need it. For the torus, this is basically the dimensions I currently have. Most likely you might have some dimensions that might be a little bit different. Same thing for the cone. This is basically the dimensions that I have. Every other person might be a little different depending on what you're trying to get. For the plane, instead of having this basically the size of 10 by 10 for the subdivisions, I put this down to 4. Now, in some cases you might need more, in some cases you might need less. But the less that you have, the easier it is to sculpt out and such. So that's one of those kind of case-by-case basis you're going to have to really think for yourself about. So for at least the way I'm going to get started with this, I'm going to show how to make something that might be similar to a ponytail, so to speak, with the geometry that I currently have. Now, before I get started, it might not be a bad idea for me to make the other side of this, even if it's a temporary one, just so I could see how the hair would look on both sides. Now, that's not too difficult to make, thank goodness, but something you might need a little help with, particularly if your mesh has dimensions that are similar to this, because as you can see, my little manipulator over here is put over here. You have to translate X, Y, and Z are all at 0. However, if you go to the Modify section, and while the move is selected, you should be able to see the X, Y, and Z as it really is. Now, this is a huge help with what we're going to be doing next. So first thing I'm going to be doing is similar to something I showed previously. I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Special, and this is just going to be a temporary clone that I'm making for this. So the way that I'm going to be doing this Duplicate Special is I'm going to leave this as a copy. I don't want to make this an instance at this time, as it can make things a little bit tricky. The group unite, I'm not really going to need to worry about this too much now, but I'm going to leave this as parent. The big thing that you're going to change is the area where it says scale. Now, if we change the X value, that's the side to side, so that's basically going left and right, and we change the scale to a negative 1, we should make an exact copy on the other side. So this is actually kind of helpful. And now that and the reason why I hit apply is I want to make sure this is going in the correct direction first before I get rid of this. It's a minor thing, but again, if you hit apply, it definitely beats having to go all the way up to edit, all the way to duplicate special, to the settings box again, and then having to do it over and over. So if you're not sure if something's going to work, use apply first, because it is a bit of a time saver. And then in the values that I have over here, I'm going to change that to a negative, in my case 18.44, and it goes to the other side perfectly. I'm going to do the same thing for the eye. I'm going to make myself a quick temporary eye for the other side, just because the open eye socket would be a little strange. So I'm going to hit Shift D to make a perfect copy. And in the X, Y, Z values over here, all I need to do again is just hit the negative value, and it goes over perfectly. This is one of the reasons why I was such a stickler to basically make sure that you made sure that your mesh was directly in the center. If you do this, it makes your life so much easier. Okay, so my lady is ready to get a little bit of hair. Now the way that I'm going to get started with this is I'm going to once again select the mesh. I am going to choose the object X for the symmetry, And having the soft selection probably isn't going to be a bad idea either. So I'm going to bring this in a little bit more. You might want to take this opportunity, if this area can be frozen, to actually freeze this. So I'm just checking, yep, there's the layer that I'm working with. I'm going to temporarily freeze this so I don't accidentally move that by mistake. That can be a problem. But again, this is stuff we've set up already, so I wouldn't worry too much about this. So I'm going to go in a little bit more. And I'm just going to add a very simple smooth option. Now before this, if you want to basically save yourself a little bit of hassle, you can start sculpting some areas right from the get-go. So I can go up here and yep, that part's going up just fine. And I'm just basically going to sculpt out certain parts early. Again, if you basically do a lot of this work at the beginning, it basically means a lot less work you'll have to do later. I'm just bringing this in like so. Again, this is the middle of the hair, so I'm bringing this over a little bit. This is the back area, bringing this over. And again, the goal of what I'm doing here is I just want to make something that's similar to that of a ponytail. So I need to make sure that all my geometry is in the proper place. And you might have some collision at first. The good news is we will be able to fix this as we progress, so I wouldn't worry too much about that yet. And this is one of the reasons, again, why we have our layers. Make sure there's nothing's moved and such. Now again, you don't necessarily need to do this for your project if it doesn't work out for what you need to do. However, you might find that a polygonal method, kind of like what we're doing here, might be a good starting point for yourself. But again, what I would say when making Lego hair, so to speak, is try to get the bigger sculpts out of the way so that this part just ends up being a little bit easier later on. Now I'm going to imagine that the ponytail will cover the ears, so I'm not too concerned about them showing. In another lecture, I will show how to make some very simple cartoon ears, but I think that should do it. Just going to move this back a little bit as well. So yeah, so this is basically my little wig for now. Now the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to, in object mode of course, add a smooth. Now, this might be a little bit on the small side because, again, we just lost a lot of geometry. This is normal and okay because all we need to do now is, once again, go to our vertices or edges, however you want to do this, and we're going to use the soft selection to help us. So basically just go to the very top. And again, the amount that you basically are going to change for this, and again, I'd recommend surface over volume. We'll try 5, and yeah, anything that you see here, oops, should be moved or slightly altered and such. Yeah, there we go. And again, this is one of the reasons why I really didn't sweat the small stuff, at least at the beginning, because again, some of this stuff might change up as we go. And just basically trying to just adjust and change things as we progress. And again, sometimes it helps if you remember what your goal is, what you're trying to achieve. And for me, I'm just basically trying to make a little bit of mock hair so that eventually I can potentially smooth this again for this. Now, something that could help out quite a bit as well is just kind of get an idea of what the end goal should look like. So I'm actually going to, let's see, ponytail hairstyle. And sometimes it's good to get some references to help. So this is what I'm basically doing over here, just getting some ideas of how the main shape should look. So again, it looks like for the most part, doing a very quick little search, it's kind of looks like the hair mostly stays pretty close to the sculpt. To the head is over here. It kind of poofs out in a couple areas depending on how complex the ponytail is. So that's completely up to you on how you want to approach this. But it definitely looks a little bit more rounded, not too boxy. So that is something I would want to emulate. So look a little boxy here. So I'm going to fix that up a little bit. So I hit number 3 so that I can see a preview of this. This is basically why it looks the way that it does. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's way better. Now the hard part's going to be this bottom section because everything else is looking like it's coming around roughly the way that I was hoping it would. I'm going to turn off the soft selection temporarily. So let's take a look at that bottom section. Again, getting an idea of how it's actually done is such a huge help when you're doing 3D. Okay, so something like this, something like this. So this area ends up being quite round too. So that's what I'm going to want to do. So basically this area might come out a little bit more. This area might come out a little bit more. These areas come out. This area is coming up. There we are. And again, if you do want it to kind of cover the ears, that is an option. If you don't feel that that's going to benefit, you can always bring that in. Now, one other thing to kind of consider about Lego hair, as you can see over here, I'm not worrying too much about collision, at least at this time. I think if I bring this up a little bit, and then bring this area down a little bit. All right, now we got a game. And of course, again, it's always good to double check to make sure that you're moving only what's necessary. There we are. That looks better. Excellent. Okay. So that's basically, again, most of the stuff that I just want to get into at this time. Yeah. So what I'm going to do next, just because, again, this should give you a brief idea on how you can approach this. Again, when you if you do have a character with ears, then that's a bridge you can get to it once you get to that point. But what I'd like to do now is I just want to add a little bit of an actual tail to this as well. Should be relatively simple enough to do. Basically what I'm just going to go over here is I'm going to bring this over like this. And I'm going to get, once again, the basic shape of something that might be ponytail-ish. Now in this case, I'm going to turn off the little object option that I have over here, and I'm going to scale this in like so. Going to scale that in a little bit. And what I'm just doing here is I'm just trying to get the basic shape just to get started. And now, if necessary, I can add more elements. In some cases, to make certain areas poof out a little bit. In other cases, I could use this as an area to maybe rotate this around, bring this over. bring this in like this. And of course, I can use this opportunity, just making sure I got, yeah. Going to turn on my symmetry again, and I'm going to round out these sections just a bit. Now, for some reason, if some stuff doesn't transfer over, which does sometimes happen, by the way, you might just have to select some of those areas yourself. Yeah, there we go. And just pointing that part out. Ah, very cool. So, yep, you can basically have it go in here. Or alternatively, something that might look a little bit better, instead of just putting this like so, because that's actually looking pretty nice. But you could also make accessories. Like, for example, I could add a little bit of a scrunchie here, just by taking this over, rotate this in like this, and then just taking this opportunity to, and this is one of the reasons why I kept the torus elements open. Oop. You might have to do this a little bit more manually. So let's see. So scene radius, I'll put that at 0.005. Nope, I'm actually happy with this. Okay, so 0.01. Nope, too much. This is why, again, sometimes trial and error is necessary. There we go. Trial and error is necessary. But again, with enough patience, you could eventually get the look that you want. So over here, again, I could go into the smooth option. Do the same thing over here, adding the smooth so I can make this smooth more permanent. And again, it's just a matter of basically adding or moving what's necessary. Now, I can still do some more stuff with this ponytail. Oh, there is one last thing I did want to add in, I have to admit. And that is, what if you wanted to add some elements to basically make this like a strand of hair or something. And again, this is where the geometry comes in pretty nicely. In this case, you can basically bring this over. And just add myself a strand of hair. And again, the way that I could do this is similar to what I did previously. Just sculpt out the areas that you need to put exactly where. And again, if you do it at a low poly count first, it does make the process a lot easier. And then once you're ready, you can smooth that out eventually. And again, if it goes inside, so be it. Again, if it goes inside the actual hair itself, that's not a problem. And yeah, just add in an extra here, maybe go into the other end. Yep, just gonna rotate this way. That's pretty much all a person would really need to do to basically just get some very simple Lego hair. Again, this is basically what I call this. If you want to call it something different, you're more than welcome to do so. But at least if you have a cartoon style, you could definitely get away with Lego hair a lot easier. Now, if you are making something a little bit more complex, then you're going to have to get a little bit more creative in those cases. I think the only last thing I want to do here, because this is going to bug me, is I do want to select this area and let's see, just bring these areas back a little bit. Yeah, there we go. We'll bring in these areas forward a little bit. Oop. That's the hard part, is getting really good balance. I didn't want that area to be too blocky. Technically, I didn't want it to be blocky at all. And let's see. Forgot the other side, but that's okay, because this way I can actually add some minor differences here or there. There we are. And just the other thing to kind of consider, usually if you're going to be making anything like this, you're going to need to part it in some way. So I'm just basically bringing this area over, bringing this area down. And again, all I'm doing here is just some minor sculpting. And again, the more you play around with it, the more you'll eventually get some details that you'll want. I can keep going around this for a while, but I do want to show you the other method of making hair. So I'm going to take these elements, because I might want to come back to this, but I'm going to just take a moment to make this its own layer. I'll call this PT for ponytail layer. Always label your stuff. Hit save. And yeah, I'm just going to hide this for now. Okay, so that's one method. The other method that you can make is something that looks more like a banana peel. Of sorts. Basically, we're just going to be taking a mesh like this, and we're going to shape this out to different hair shapes. Now, an advantage of using this is, again, you can work with a lower poly count and just sculpt this however you need to sculpt it in the ways, in certain ways. The con, though, is it does take a little bit more elbow grease and a lot of patience. But if you are willing to tough it out, you can very simply make a lot of different hair shapes with relative ease. And there's a couple things that you can add into this along the way. So what I would do first, at least if I wanted to make hair similar to my characters, is I usually tend to try and get the, in this case, just some of the bigger details if possible. So I'm going to make actually a duplication of this, bring this over, and let's see how much time we have. Okay, so still good on time. I knew that this is probably going to run a little bit on the long side, but that's all right. And yeah, definitely going to make sure that I don't have my symmetry turned on. I'm temporarily going to turn off this. I'm going to scale this inwards. And again, it's usually best if you follow the flow of how the hair is going. So considering that the hair is starting on the character's left side, our right side, that's where I want to put that over here. And I just want to make sure that the hair is only as long as we need it for that side part. Bring this in. Let's see. Okay. Again, what I'm just trying to do here is I'm going to get the basic shape to go around here. Oh, and it's been a while since I've saved, so I'm going to save this as something new. I'm going to name this Week 7 Hair, because that would have been bad since I've already gone around 20 minutes and not save. And some people like to live dangerously, but when it comes to 3D, you could lose a lot of information in 20 minutes. Like we've already made most, but not quite a complete hairstyle. Okay, so that's how that part's starting out. And we're going to be adding a lot more hair along the way. Or a lot more details along the way, I should say. This is the part that's going to be a little bit tricky, is the ends of these. So this part I might actually have to select a little bit more manually. There we go. Okay. It looks like this is going all the way to the shoulders, give or take. So I'm going to emulate that myself. And I'm not going to make it completely round, but I do want it to make it round-ish. Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. Okay. So that side is at least pretty decently shaped. I'm going to add a couple of extra edge loops here and there. And again, if there's any other areas that I want to add in a little bit of extra shape, I could still do that. But I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing so far. Okay, now, this is great if we basically want to keep this a little straight over here, but we can also take a moment to add in some extra details to make this look a little bit less like what we have over here, which could be completely straight, down, and add some extra elements, like, for example, actual hair strands. Now, again, this is definitely works better for cartoonish-like hair, so for this character it would actually work great, but it might not work best for everything, so just please keep that in mind. So I'm going to add an insert edge loop in 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. So let's see, insert edge loop tool, 2, 3, and 4. Now what I'm going to do with these extra hairs is I am going to basically just take this moment to select all of them, and I'm going to actually move them outwards like this. And this one I'm going to add and add inwards a little bit. Cool. Now you can also take these ones that we just brought up and move them down a little bit to give the illusion that this hair is a little bit straighter like this. Again, adding some more dimension to it and hopefully making this look kind of interesting. And again, if there's other areas that need to be fixed or changed along the way, like for example, this area looks a little bit too flat, so I'm just taking a moment to resculpt as I go. Eventually, if necessary, I could even use the extrude to help me with this. Thank goodness for the soft selection. There we go. Okay, so that part at least has a good start to it. Now I could choose one of two directions with this. I can add more hair or add more geometry to help out with this roundness area. Oh, also wouldn't be a bad idea to move my pivot point because that's way out there. So modify, center pivot. Nice. Okay, and you can even use this as a start for the other side. So for example, if I went to, once again, edit, duplicate special, I could try to use the scale over here. It's going to the other side. Now, unlike what I did before, I'm going to move this a little bit more manually because I don't need this area, but I could use this section and move that inwards a little bit. So bringing this in. Bring this down and over. And there we go. That part's looking okay. But yeah, as I said before, don't be afraid to add more geometry if it's necessary. After all, we're under no massive poly count, though try to keep it under 1 million, I would say. So there we go. And again, if you need to add more geometry in a couple places, don't be shy about it. Do what must be done. After all, the poly count, as you can see over here, for this hair is relatively low. I mean, we're at 64 faces, so we're not in any danger of going overboard with this. Do the same thing over here. Insert edge loop tool. Oops. And looks like I have that crash on me, so hopefully that should come up. Worst case scenario, I'll make, if it is the situation where it did crash and I need to kind of get back to this, I'll make a second video to help. There we are. Hopefully it got most of what we needed. And well, it looks like this is going to take a little bit of time to fix up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit of a pause in this video and I'll make a part 2 shortly. So I do apologize about this. We will continue momentarily.